At the conceptualization of this program, it was felt that since we had a number of new units, that we needed to give you the opportunity to gain some practical knowledge as to what your responses could be leading into the hurricane season. Need I not remind you that already this hurricane season has been forecasted to be one above average. And as we speak, there's another system that is veering in our direction, which means that we must be very careful and we must be proactive as we prepare for what your function and your role can be within your respective communities. We are going to have the evaluations, and the evaluations will be done by the Red Cross, who is one of our partners in this exercise. They obviously are not only medical, but you know the Red Cross is an international organization that is well versed and participated in the several disaster considerations. So we're going to draw on the strength of their evaluation. We also have the roving response team, who you're going to find going forward is going to be working very closely with us because we see them as part of our stakeholders. They're going to help fill some of the gaps that we currently have in our DO in terms of helping you to offer some level of training in terms of what your response mechanisms can be. So if this is the first initiative, it will not be the last. We're also going to have the BCBRA delivering their report, and obviously the Barbados Citizens Bands Radio is well known within this country to provide radio communication services. You would have seen them at several national incidences and also responding to a number of programs that the Department of Emergency Management would have put out in the past. And we will be looking forward to a continued partnership with these organizations. That is the BCBRA, the Roving Response Team, and the Red Cross. There will be other agencies which I'm not going to speak of at this particular point in time because I always like to follow protocols and inform the Department of Emergency Management what are some of the futuristic plans that I am proposing. But rest assured, all of the essential services have pledged their participation and their intention to work with us in DOs. Let us give them a round of applause for that. I hope you can see the Department of Emergency Management has taken the function and role of the DO a little bit more seriously than may have been in the past, and I'm proud to be a part of that. But we cannot do this alone. We're going to be relying on your commitment. You are going to find going forward, there are going to be certain changes that we will be exposing to you. Those changes will help to foster a better response attitude and an environment in which you perform your respective tasks. But training is going to be one of the major planks that we hope to build the district emergency organizations across the country. Within your evaluation sheet, at the back of your evaluation sheet is divided into two. The first page, we're asking you to evaluate what are your comments and your views on this exercise here today. On the back of that evaluation sheet, you're going to find a number of training seminars that we are considering offering to you, the members of the district emergency organization. That level of training, once we can successfully execute them within a specific time frame, it is obviously not going to be all ready for this year, but the work of the district emergency organization, if you see that quantum of training opportunities that we hope to provide for you, it means that we will be having all year-round training. It means that the DOs can no longer expect to only function around the hurricane season. Because if you are practicing comprehensive disaster management concepts, you never know when the disaster is going to fall on our doorsteps, and we have to be able to be ready to respond up to the level of the training that you have received, and therefore to offer our communities that level of community resilience that we're so lacking. In the Barbados, there are too many people who only see their concerns when a hurricane comes. And ironically, the hurricane is the only hazard that gives you an opportunity to have a warning mechanism attached to it. An earthquake doesn't tell you when it's going to come. The thief is carrying some, the fire carries all. So you don't know when the fire is going to come on your doorstep. So we must practice the whole concept going forward that we must adhere to discipline, best practices, training, commitment, and community engagement. The DOs now have to build on those 5 pillars. I can repeat them again. Community engagement, because too many of our communities do not know that the DOs are actually functioning or actually there. So we need to engage our communities. We need to be more disciplined in terms of your professionalism and also how you adhere and carry out your respective responsibilities, because persons in the community are watching you. And if you continue, in some cases, the bad practices, it does not speak going forward to the image of what the District Emergency Organization is all about. Training. When the training is being offered, there will be times that persons will not be able to attend a number of the training because you are working and you have other engagements. But whenever the training is scheduled, try as much as possible to attend the training. And the training will be done on a zonal basis. We had quite difficulties in trying to convince the School of Management that we're going to put 135 persons in this room. If we did not have COVID, that would not have been a problem. So the zoning is going to be the way forward, and which we hope to introduce a level of training. And in your book, you'll see some focal points. And those schools have been identified to be those areas that is more easily accessible, that we are able to facilitate the training from those venues. However, if you know better than me, your community, and we have spaces, churches, community centers, or whatever that we can access, that we can deliver the various training that we hope to bring to you, do feed that information to us. So we're speaking about commitment. We now need to raise the level of commitment. I know all of you are here committed, but we just need to turn up a notch so that the community can see that we are serious in our efforts, because it's the community and the business community that we're going to be relying on for the level of resources that we much need. I don't need to tell you that we are currently going through an economic situation, so let's say in my individual DO, I am in real trouble because I'm going to help in the hotel sector because the hotels closed. So I now have to find a different source of support. But if we do not impress on those persons that we are worthy, we are committed, we are trained, and we are functioning at the level that is optimum, I do not think they will take us serious. You agree with that point? So I think now, going forward, we now have to change our mindset. I like to use the word a paradigm shift in how our attitude and our training and our concepts in terms of our function and our responsibility so that we can do what is required. I think I've spoken enough. I was just giving the evaluators enough time to dot their I's and cross the T's. So we have the Red Cross, BCBRA, the Roving Response Team, and then we will have Major Binks, who needs no introduction to a lot of people in this country. He is going to give the overall evaluation as to what are some of his thoughts and what are some of his observations. The Deputy Director Acting, she's on her way, and she will give the closing remarks. So, Mr. Austin, I don't know if you or Peterson, can you make your way to the microphone? And there's a tag team. Can we have the ambulance on standby?
Good afternoon, everybody. It was good to be part of this process. Exercises, trust me, they're supposed to be the easiest of things, but for a lot of people, they become the most nervous of things. And especially if you're new to them, and that's what we saw early in the morning in particular. The first person who always comes up to bowl that first ball, they're the nervous ones, and others can learn from them and feed off of them. But what was good is that we had people in the background, giving some coaching and stuff, and it helped the process, help soothe the nerves and stuff of people. Specifically from the medical side, you can't talk about medical in this day and age without mentioning COVID, and I think, when information was being transmitted that involved that medical component, we kept hearing the COVID stuff coming up quite often. So those radio operators that were hitting the COVID message, you were spot on the ball. With persons who were injured, when you were giving updates as to what was happening with them, you were quite clear in knowing the sort of processes that had to follow when somebody's out there trapped, need medical attention or whatever, who the different teams that you had to call out and stuff like that, that came across. Sometimes a little bit more of what you need to put in, the demographics of the person. You know, don't just say, oh, the person has been injured. You know, who is the person? It makes a big difference. Male, female, child, you know, elderly, you know, somebody who, you know, physical injuries before or whatever. So some of those different content, you know, those stuff need to go in there. But, and to wrap up, you know, one of the things that we like to hear also is that when that medical side is taken care of, you know, how do you end it? How do you end it? Do you follow up with, you know, calls to the hospital or anything like that? You know, you have a form. Do you sign off on that? That's our deal. Your job is finished. You know, we don't have to be worried about somebody calling you later. Hey, what happened to Miss So and So that went to the hospital from this accident? So how you choose to end that? That's something that would be in your protocols.
So good afternoon, everybody. Richard would have touched on those key points. For me, as a responder, time is critical. You must ensure that when you're sending your radio traffic, that you time stamp it. What time you arrived on the scene, and all the other agencies as well. That was one thing I noticed across the board. That person was missing the time of arrival, the time of departure of scenes, and so on. Also, the timeliness of your message. Some person took the entire time allotted and only had a minute and 30 seconds, if I'm correct, minute 30 seconds to send a whole 5-minute narrative, and it was ended abruptly. So again, managing your time as well, reckoning with your team. I know that your zone, some person would have met today for the first time or whatever, but that's no excuse, because in an emergency, you're meeting persons for the first time, agreeing to disagree, and that is something that you need to really work on to communicating effectively via the VHF. So the operators, I want to give those of you who did it last week for the first time, a week before, the first time, just give yourselves a hand for that, good job, right? But you need some more improvement as well, all right? Mr. Brooks, Robin? Randy, I think you're up, or the roving team? Well, the MCs departed, so we can select. Yeah.
Thank you, Peterson. All right, everybody is probably watching me because I know that this is a radio exercise. I'm evaluating radio performance. As Red Cross started out, it's always difficult to face the first ball. We noticed with some of the zones got off to a very slow start. But as time went on, they were able to pick up and get things going and falling into place. Numbers can be sometimes deceptive, and we had to evaluate based on the information that we were given. As the operator demonstrated the use of good radio etiquette techniques. As the radio operator displayed good communication skills. Was the radio operator clear, concise, and brief in his or her transmissions? So with the 5 evaluators, and based on those 3 points, we were able to come up with what we thought would be the best assumption of what happened. And I want to make a few observations first before we go to many percentages rather than remarks. We notice, this is just apart from some of the radio contents, that there was a bit of a misinterpretation or misinformation when it was first started as who you should be reporting to. You should be reporting to the evaluator, and some of you are calling for the NEOC, which I don't think were your fault. You can't blame me for that. So as we got over that, Then we went into the proper radio procedures. One of the first things I noticed as soon as we started was after the first scenario, not only one, but quite a few of the operators, radio operator, left their stations. We would learn in a process of where radio communications is concerned, you never leave your radio. You are there to provide a service. If you have to leave, you allocate another radio operator. If you're ongoing exercise, that somebody would be there at all times. And that was highlighted that when the NEOC was starting round 2, there was nobody at the radio to hear that they were starting round 2, or acknowledge that they were starting round 2, or even probably start to work on it. So that's one thing. If you are in a communications exercise, always make sure that there is a radio operator at your stations. Never abandon your station. You can get an urgent call in the disaster and nobody is there, and it goes unnoticed. Some of the problems that we observe as well, that there were too many breaks and how copy. We were taught in radio communications that if you have a short sentence, you read that sentence out and you break at the end of that. If you have a long sentence, you would pause or call for a break, pause maybe halfway, and carry on. Or there were like 2 words and then you hear break. 2 more words and break. That takes up time. So you look at the message that you are going to send. You plan in your mind where you are going to pause. In this case, it was not that critical because the persons were not really writing the message. And that's another area of concern that we had. You were reading out the scenarios which everybody had printed in front of them, and that was not necessary. What I think you all were here to do was to give us, the evaluators, what action you were taking to deal with the scenario in front of you. And that is what we are trying to get from all of you, to make sure that you dealt with the scenario. Let us know what action you took. You call the ambulance or the car that overturned. You make sure that the surroundings were safe for the environment for you to go and check on the individual in the car. There's no smoke coming from the car. There's no fire. When you went and check on the person, if you had medical assistance, to check on them to make sure that they were okay before they can be moved, and various things like that before, instead of sending the scenario. And I think that quite a few of you were sending the scenario. One thing that I'm glad to hear is that some of you were using the preamble and so on the message form. So I know the exercise for the last 2 Saturdays was worthwhile because you knew the preamble, number and precedence and so on. But you also would remember that we said in a situation where you are sending a message, nobody's expecting you to sit down under a tree on a big rock and try and fill out a form to send a message. So the preamble was not necessary here because the messages, as I said, were not supposed to be sent and nobody was writing the message. You wait until you finish saying what you were saying and then we say Roger, because there's no point in writing the message. But it did show up that you were paying attention at the club the last 2 Saturdays. I also observed that you were not using the radio operators. We had just trained 2 radio operators, one at each other, from, I think it was 27 DEOs. So I thought that I would see more involvement of the radio persons who were trained. At one stage, I went to one of the tents, and the lady had just finished sending the message for 3 of the rounds out of the 5. So I asked her, please see if you can find somebody else to send a message. So you have to build that confidence. I know when we have, and all of you been to the clubhouse during the training, that after I go through the scenario and radio training and the message and so on, say, well, I want 2 persons now. 1 to send a message and 1 to receive. I usually have to beg to get 2 people to come up, although you've just sat down and gone through the exercise. So that says it here as well. You have to build that confidence in yourself that you can take over and pass any messages and handle it really efficiently. So we will have to look at doing more radio sessions for you between Selwyn and DEM, try and get some more radio sessions in and build that confidence. And with each DEO should have a nucleus of operators. If you are trained to be a radio operator, take it seriously and be committed to using the radio. because that is what's going to get your message out from one point to another. No cell phones. Within 3 minutes, cell phones are dead if you have a lot of traffic. So you have to get that confidence and build up that confidence in you to use the radio. We also observed that it did not appear to be effective communications between individuals related to the scenarios in the tent. Everybody was arguing a separate point, and if you had like road clear or anything, everybody was putting in their few cents worth, and there was no really collaboration between those persons to deal with the prospective scenario that they were supposed to deal with. We noticed that in one or two of the tents. No conclusive message to report to evaluator control. Which I mentioned, you were passing the scenarios instead of the conclusive message that you acted on the evaluator control. You want me to give you the results in percentages rather than points? So within the zones, as I said, numbers are just numbers. It's how different people think. So I don't want to think of anything as failure or anything like that, but just instill in yourself that you have to go further and you have to do more. And let your guide, your conscience be your guide, how you felt in handling, how you think you did, and evaluate yourself as well, and not necessarily how my guys evaluated you. You get that confidence. Zone 1, we came up with a 75% out of the total, which is 75 marks. Zone 2, almost perfect. Zone 2, we got 73, which is almost 100%. Zone 3, 75%. Zone 4, 50%. And Zone 5, 33%. So everybody did something, and you might have been weak in one area, but maybe one or two of the others have boosted as well. So build in yourself that you need to do a little bit more and be committed to do that. BCB area is committed to assisting with the training where radio is concerned, and we do all we can. Right now, I have training for next 3 Saturdays. Trying to kill me or something. But next 3 Saturdays, I have training right down to the first Saturday in September. And people have been asking me to continue to train them as well into September. So as long as there's breath in my body, I'll try to do that. I can't get any young people to take over. Carol and myself down there in Colbert, we over the hill, but we'll continue to do what we can. Mr. Brooks mentioned about another system out there. I just want to advise that said that this year is going to be very active. In fact, towards the end of last month, upgraded it from 20 systems to 24 systems. I'm not trying to scare anybody, but I got scared myself when I read an article at one of the weather sites that I usually monitor, about 4 or 5 that I go through and get their opinions and monitor them. But I thought it interesting to mention, and this is one from somebody who is considered to be one of the, not the top, but one of the ones that people take attention to. And he said that the rest of this season, starting from August the 25th or so to September 25th, is just not going to be an active season. It is going to be a hyperactive season. And that tells you what that word hyper, when he saw that, he said, Lord have mercy on us. So you need to be conscious, and you need to prepare yourselves and get everything ready. Where communication is concerned, it's important. When we had the earth tremor, if you remember, go back to that, within 3 minutes, cell phones were dead. So don't count on your cell phone. Everybody calling, if you felt that, where you were and so on. Radio communication, even if the towers come down, you can still use your radio and use a relay message to get information through. So it's going to be your savior in a disaster, and you have to get in the habit of working with zones. If one DEO can't function properly, and you can get help from another zone, that is what the zoning is all about. Cohesion and working together as a team. I enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed it. And as Mr. Brooks said, there are several more to come. So we will see each other soon again. Thank you.
Good evening. I guess our role at the Rural Response Team here today, one of the easiest out of the BCBRA and First Aid, Red Cross, sorry. I just have to reiterate our support the Red Cross in their comments as well as BCBRA. But adding to what Ronnie just said about this season being a hyper hurricane season, that should be our thoughts as to our level of preparedness. And I see this activity here today as part of being prepared. We all started out a little shaky, nervous this morning, but as the day went along, we picked up and we found our feet and our confidence, and we built. And I think that's where we should be in terms of being prepared. I know there are different levels of preparedness across the island, so let's use this as a catalyst to get ourselves in gear and be prepared. Now, I'm not here to speak about the first aid aspect, nor the radio communication, seeing that this is how this particular exercise was structured. But I would speak on the fact that we need to be prepared when we are called upon, that we can get out there and function effectively. Having said that, know your individual strengths, go about, figure out what gear is necessary so that when you turn up on scene, you're well adorned, you have your kits and what is necessary. I would like to add that going through all the scenarios, I was pleased to see the level of thought that some of the DOs put into what action they're going to take and what is going on and how they're going to respond. And bear in mind your personal safety when responding. Bear in mind your personal safety and the safety of your partners. We in the first responder realm know the first 3 tenets of a first responder, and I guess you all would know them. And if you don't know, the first tenet is safety to self first, because if you're not in a capacity to execute the task, well, what's going to happen to the person you went to help? And the second one is, you can tell me the second one is? Anybody? Anybody can tell me the second tenet? Safety to self first. That's the second one. And you can guess the third one? Safety to self first. So all in all, when we out there going to respond, I implore you to remember that. Sometimes in the adrenaline flowing and the effort to get out there and do something, don't be the casualty. Remember, you can only be as effective as how safe you are to yourself. Good evening.
Yes, Major Banks. I can just let the Major just walk up to the microphone. So I have great expectations from this aspect of the evaluation, because he's also going to be evaluating what I may have said or what I did not do. So let me welcome my dear colleague and friend to the microphone. And I know him as he is. He's going to be very thorough, and he's not going to spare anyone.
Good afternoon, everyone. Master of Ceremonies failed. Any form of exercise, there is no pass or fail. You will not hear me ever say you passed or you failed. Exercises are held for a single purpose only: to test, to evaluate, and to learn. to test, to evaluate, and to learn. Red Cross BCBRA roving team mentioned the specifics as far as I'm aware. I would like to add one. Randy mentioned there was too much break and how copy. How copy is one, personally, stupid thing to say. Because the operator you're talking to, if they don't understand what you said, will tell you to repeat it. Okay? If they understand what you say, not a problem. If they don't understand, they will say something like, repeat all after and say the last word that they caught. So there is no need to say how copy. We started off slow. As everybody has said before me, nobody likes getting their feet wet. Okay? But you have to. And you did. Okay? You have to, and you did. All in all, things picked up and went on beautifully. Okay? Few points that I will say. There are a lot of faces here that I've known for a long time. There are quite a few faces here that I have never seen before. The faces that I've seen before, not necessarily in a DEO, but in other capacities, have a wealth of experience and knowledge. If they're anything like me, and I like to think they are, they want to share that experience and their knowledge. If they try to tell the youngsters something, okay, listen and understand. If you don't understand, ask a question. 27 DEOs, for as long as I can remember, was 27 DEOs. The concept of zoning now, I understand why. Okay? I understand why. But use the knowledge of the people that have been there before you. If they offer advice, listen. Notice I'm not saying take it. Because I can give advice and nobody will take it. Been doing it for years, right, Selwyn? The experience is there. Okay? Experience is there. I heard one point being made at a vehicle accident, make sure that the engine is turned off. You need to go one further than that. Because the ignition can be turned off and a wire has been damaged and you can still turn around and have electric current cause an explosion while you're right there. You need to disconnect the battery. You haven't got pliers or spanners or anything, cut the wire. If you cut the wire, make sure that the wire you cut from the battery does not touch the chassis. Okay? Safety, as my good friend Harcourt has said, is 3 of the most important things you need to bear in mind responding to a scenario. As I said, you've done well. I'm going to submit a written report to DEM, but I think, in all honesty, today you can be proud of what you've done. It is the start. It is the start. You have a long way to go. And I'm not saying that to say that you aren't halfway there. Just like me, I'm still learning. A lot of things change rapidly in the emergency response field. Your start point basically has been today. I would like to think that you have learnt, you have understood, the roles that you will be expected to fulfill in your communities in the event something does happen. Not might, not may, does. I've seen a lot. I've done a lot. I hope you don't see half the things that I've seen or do half the things that I do. But once you have the training, you have the capacity, you will do what you can. Today's the start point. As far as I'm concerned, you have done well. You have done very well. Give yourself a round of applause. Thank you.
I'm going to take this next 2 minutes to just say thanks to our stakeholders, and our Deputy Director is going to close the session. To the members of the roving team, I would like to thank you very much for your contributions. The roving team were tasked as part of the logistical support to this exercise, and I think you've done well. So let us give the roving team a round of applause. The Red Cross, when you look and you see they have come prepared not only with their observers or their medical personnel, they have even brought an ambulance, because I was just told that they had brought the ambulance for me. But what happened there is that the bed in there is not long enough. But let us thank the Red Cross for the input. As another one of our partners, I think you have done remarkably well. So let us give a round of applause for the Red Cross. Members of the BCBRA who will need no introduction, I would like to, since this scenario was a communication exercise, I would concur with everyone that the BCBR again rose to the plate by not only providing the substance in terms of our training, but also outfitted us with the equipment, with some assistance from the Department of Emergency Management. And to Randy and members of your team, I would like to say a heartfelt thanks on behalf of all of the members here for your contribution to this exercise, but put you on warning or put you on notice that we will be knocking at your door continuously, not again and again, but continuously. So let's give the BCBR a round of applause. I am quite certain that we don't have to turn around, but from the comments that have been expressed, the food was sumptuous, correct? So let us thank our caterers. The only problem with the caterers is that, yes, I think they did a marvelous job. The food was tasty. So let's give them another round of applause. Let them show that their food kept us. And my last thank is to the Department of Emergency Management. We were graced by the presence of the director, who would have given the opening remarks. And we are graced with our deputy director, who is going to close the session. If that does not speak to the fact that the Department of Emergency Management, even although they are a host agency, they are committed to the work and the functioning of the DOs. And by their presence this morning and by Daniel here at the closing session speaks volume going forward that our parent body is fully supportive and fully behind our efforts and what we are proposing to do. So, even before she comes to the microphone, let us give our parent body a round of applause for the commitment and for the support. But let us also, by our continue to applaud, let us also know by our continuous applauding, we are looking forward to their continued support, because we will be knocking on their doors continuously as well. I think we can do better than that. It gives me great pleasure now to invite our Deputy Director, Mr. Daniel Skeet, to give the closing remarks. Madam Deputy Director.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Mr. Brooks. So basically, I'm just here to announce the benediction, really. This is time for you to go. Your numbers today have been heartening. Long before I got here, I was seeing pictures. I was seeing the group that was here. And I just want to say thank you to you, because volunteerism obviously is not something, it's a thankless job, if we want to call it a job. It's a thankless task. And that you are committed to giving up an entire Saturday to come not only to increase your capacity and your knowledge, but really at the end of the day, it is to help your community and by extension to help our country in times of disaster and times of crises. So really just to say thank you to you for doing that. I'm hearing you, so we promise that this will not be the last exercise. But I just also want to let you know that your individual DEOs have our permission and our blessing as individual units and groups. You can contact the BCBRA directly if you need any further assistance or any further training for other members in your groups. I heard Mr. Brooks, he thanked everyone, but really we should also thank him. He's the person who conceptualized Exercise Montgomery. It didn't just happen overnight, and it was a few months of intense planning, etc. But I just want to say a heartfelt thanks to Mr. Brooks for all the work that he has done in terms of putting the district emergency organizations on the right track. As I said earlier, I trust that it would have been a beneficial day to you, and I suspect that it was because you're still here. You didn't get out and you didn't leave. So that's amazing and that's fantastic. So just to add my thanks to all of the other organizations who were here as well, and to say until we meet again, as I am sure that we will. So everybody travel safely, and we'll see you in the swing.